Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. You join me back in a Ford Cougar. If you haven't watched my video about Ford Cougars and crossovers and SUVs from a couple of weeks ago, do watch it. This is a different Ford Cougar though. I had to hire another car and it's another one of these. This one though is hybrid and automatic and a facelift and is a bit different. And actually I think being an automatic suits it slightly better, though the hybrid system is a bit weird. And the engine's a bit harsh. I think when the engine is running, it's a bit harsh and noisy and horrible. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Ford Cougars. We're here to celebrate the fact that I got a rally prediction right. Go me. Yes, I predicted that Elfyn Evans would win Rally Japan, and he did. Finally he won another rally. Finally, I got a prediction right. It was actually the Welshman's second win of 2026, wasn't it? It's his third win, I think, at Rally Japan, which is turning into be something of a strong event for him. That isn't the most important thing, though, I don't think, though, is it? I think what is the most important thing is the fact that he now has a 20-point lead in the championship. More importantly, even than that, is that he has a 49-point lead over Oliver Solberg and a massive 61-point lead over Sebastian Ogier. So Rally Japan could prove to be something of a decisive weekend in terms of this year's championship, especially as we now move on to gravel for the rest of the year. This lead is going to be very, very important, isn't it, for Elfyn Evans, because he's now in the lucky position where he just needs to defend. He's got a big margin. Yes, you've got Takamoto Katsuta is the closest man in second place, 20 points back, but like I said, that 49-point and 61-point to Solberg and Ogier respectively is a major advantage, isn't it? I think if Elfyn Evans had not won Rally Japan, his second half of the season was going to be much more difficult, but I think he now has enough of an advantage that he can avoid taking any risks, and he can just focus on doing what he does best, which is just racking up points without doing anything silly. You know, that is his strong suit as a driver, and he's now in the fortunate position where his two strongest rivals, you know, Katsuta is in it, I don't want to dismiss Katsuta, but his two fastest rivals perhaps are now a long way back. That said, you do have to say that Elfyn Evans was very impressive over the weekend. Yes, Oliver Solberg was quickest out of the blocks, but Evans reacted, smashed everyone, didn't he, on the second stage as that noisy, rattly engine starts up, and he took charge of the rally from there, didn't he? You know, it was a proper drive, and I thought it was telling, really, that Sebastian Ogier didn't really seem to have any answers to Evans' pace as the weekend wore on. He did struggle a bit on the opening day, did Ogier, but I think this could be the weekend where Ogier's probably distant championship hopes probably ended, because he needs some real good fortune from this point onwards if he wants to be in with a chance of winning title number 10, you know. And if you look at the results, I think it was only Takamoto Katsuta that had fewer stage wins than Ogier over the weekend in Toyota terms. His road position wasn't that helpful, was it? I think Evans had a little bit of an advantage with running first on the road. But, you know, he still couldn't make a meaningful dent in Evans' lead as the weekend wore on. And, you know, no matter how many digs he makes at the hand-cooked tyres, his teammates are on the same rubber in the same car, and you know, it ultimately it's him that's not getting the most from him, isn't it? Elfyn Evans and Oliver Solberg were very fast. And we do have to talk about Oliver Solberg, don't we? Because for all of Evans' brilliance, there was a young man who demonstrated once again that there is still some maturing to do, isn't there? He was very quick. He was very much in the fight. But there was that moment there, wasn't there? Stage 10, a little bit too much speed and running wide, hitting a pole, rear right wheel removed, rally victory gone. You know, it wasn't a terrible weekend in some respects. You know, he won maximum Super Sunday points, won the power stage, but it was just yet another weekend where Oliver Solberg showed he's fast enough to win rallies, but he is also prone to mistakes. I've defended this plenty of times in the past. You know, he's still young. These things do happen. But this is the major stumbling block for him now. You know, there's no doubt about the speed, but these incidents are becoming a regular occurrence and he needs to get on top of them. I've said all along, I don't think he's going to win the championship this year. I still don't think he's going to win the championship this year, but you know, next year and beyond, that is what he needs to focus on. If he can get over that, he is going to be almost unstoppable, I think. It was a little interesting moment, wasn't there? Sébastien Ogier said that Solberg's accident was a result of him pushing too hard. So Solberg responded and said, you know, obviously he was in a fight and he wasn't driving any faster than he normally would. I mean, that's kind of the point, isn't it? Because yes, he does keep driving that fast, but he does keep having these little moments, doesn't he? So I think it's a tough place to come back from. You know, 49 points is a big gap. It is not over. The gravel rallies will potentially help Solberg in terms of running order and road position. But I think at this point he still needs to hope that Elfyn Evans has a tricky rally or two, doesn't he? So, yeah, another challenging weekend for Oliver Solberg, and he's got some work to do, hasn't he? Just touching on the other Toyotas briefly. So, Sami Pajari, he put in another solid performance. 3rd place, 5th podium of the season, 4 fastest times. He's doing really well, isn't he? He's having a really strong building year. A maiden win can't be far away, in my view. And yeah, he's just doing a really good job. Really solid. Takamoto Katsuta, disappointing. I think disappointing. He is desperate to win his home rally, quite understandably. And after already winning 2 events this year, he must have thought he was in with a good shot. There was a puncture on the opening stage, and it just seemed to go a bit wrong, didn't it, on Friday? I think he had another off on stage 3. He was complaining about the pace notes and things not being right. And it was a bit strange to see that, wasn't it? Strange to see him in that kind of negative place when he's usually so polite. You know, he shows his emotions, but he's usually the last person you'd expect to criticise anyone else. But he seemed to be a little bit critical of the notes and of the route note crews a little bit. So he did improve as the weekend went on, but the damage was already done, wasn't it, in terms of the overall result? And 4th place won't feel like much of a prize for him. On the flip side, 4th place would probably have felt like a massive prize for Hyundai, because they were, again, nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Adrian Formeau was the best of them. He finished in 5th, and if we're being completely honest, that was only because of Oliver Solberg's crash. The other 2 Hyundais, Thierry Neuville and Hayden Pan, finished behind him. Oh, what a weekend. It was the same story, it seemed, with all 3 cars. Understeer, a lack of grip, and just a complete inability to match the speed of the Toyotas. I think Thierry Neuville was the only Hyundai to break into the top 3 times across the weekend. He had some little issues, handbrake trouble at one point. Oh, it was a weird weekend, wasn't it? You know, if you heard the comments from Formeau and Padden, they were being quite positive about driving the car. You know, it was their last outing in the car on tarmac in this Rally 1 generation of cars, but it was just another demonstration, wasn't it, that the i20N Rally 1 is not up to the job on tarmac, you know, and there's just not much more to say than that, is there? We could talk about Hayden Padden a little bit. Obviously, he was told that he should push this weekend. I mean, what was the point in that, you know, in that car? It didn't really seem worthwhile. Obviously, there is a question mark over his future. He was only slated for tarmac rallies, so we don't know if we will see him again in 2026. I must say, I hope that we do. I think, you know, he is more of a gravel driver than a tarmac driver, and I would like to see him given the opportunity at least once, just to see what he could do with that car on the loose. I do want to talk about M Sport. There was also there a distinct lack of pace, wasn't there, compared to the Toyotas. Both of the M Sport cars were pretty much the slowest Rally 1 cars for much of the weekend. I think it was a poor weekend for Josh McAleen. Just there was a puncture on Friday, I know. I think he did an extra donut at one point in one of the super special stages. Not the only driver to do that. I think Adrian Formeau did it as well. But there just seemed to be a general lack of speed, you know, but from both Pumas, in fairness, but you know, McAleen was the slowest of the 2 Pumas. John Armstrong was consistently faster, and if you are not on the pace of the rest of the field, you need to at least be the fastest person in your car, and McAleen was not that. So, you know, I think a poor weekend for me from Macalin. You know, he needs to do better than that, and I think he needs to be looking for more than that, at least, as I said, in this inter-team battle. John Armstrong, you know, he was consistently faster than Macalin, as I said, but not on the pace of those ahead of him, and not showing the pace that he had shown in Croatia. So a little bit of a shame. Bizarre weekend in a way, though, for Armstrong, because he had this issue with his intercom that was apparently caused by sweat, which was a bit of a weird one. But at least it was a clean run for him, which is a bonus and is something that he very much needed. It's going to be really interesting to see, isn't it, what happens with the dynamic in that team over the next few rallies, with things switching to gravel. Maybe that will help Macalin along. Who knows? But I think he needs to show something, doesn't he? Because right now Armstrong is showing better pace. Let's just talk WRC2 very, very quickly then. Another correct prediction. I'll just throw that in there. I said Nikolai Gryzin would win, and he did. It was a titanic battle, though, with Alejandro Cachon in the Toyota. Cachon led the way in the early stages, then Gryzin took over. It was a ding-dong fight. They were slugging it out for all of the weekend, right up until the power stage, and Cachon, I think he was less than 3 seconds back going into the power stage, but had a spin and a stall, and that meant that he had to settle for second place. Yuki Yamamoto finished third, ahead of Emil Lindholm, so that's his maiden WRC2 podium, which is a good result, isn't it, for the Toyota Challenge driver on home soil, so nice for him. A small WRC2 field, so there's not too much to talk about, is there? But obviously a good result for Gryzin, and we're going to have to see how that plays out in terms of the championship, because there's half the season left. We don't know who's going to do what rallies yet. So, you know, in terms of the championship, there's not really any point talking about it, because it could all change once people actually start doing all of their events and we know who's scoring what where. So at least it was competitive. So that's all we say. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. How did your predictions come true in Japan? Did you predict that Elfyn would win? Did you think we'd have such a big championship gap going into the second half of the season? Do you think Evans can hold on, or do you think Solberg will mount a meaningful challenge, or do you think Sebastian Ogier will get it together, do a few more rallies and try and take title number 10? Do let me know in the comments below. While you're there, maybe you could do me a favour and hit those like and subscribe buttons. And if you can find the hype button, hit that, because apparently that's a thing. And other than that, all that remains for me to say is thank you for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.